June 12th, 9:15 p.m. The boy sat cross-legged near the dying campfire, the glow rising and falling against his pale face. He wrote into the diary with quick strokes, the pages smudged with ash from his fingers. The air smelled of pine resin and smoke. He had hiked through the forest trail alone that morning, carrying only a pack with supplies, a flashlight, and this journal his sister had pressed into his hands before he left. He told himself he wanted silence, that the city noise had left him drained. Here, the stillness was absolute, broken only by the chirping of crickets. His entry tonight spoke of calm and peace. The world felt vast yet strangely close, as if the trees leaned in around him, keeping him company. He described how the forest moved in the breeze. The trunks groaned. The fire popped. He wrote until the page filled, then closed the diary with the sense that he had settled something inside himself. He would sleep in his small tent, zipped tight against the cool night. June 13th, 7:32 a.m. He woke to sunlight cutting across the canvas of the tent. He wrote of how the night had been dreamless, and how the ground felt softer than he had expected. He boiled water for coffee and ate dry cereal. In his diary, he noted the sense of isolation. No other campers. No distant voices. Only the swaying branches and birds in the canopy above. He thought about exploring deeper into the woods. The thought thrilled him. When he closed the diary, he caught sight of something odd. The fire pit he had left carefully covered with dirt now looked disturbed. Ash and blackened wood scattered in strange arcs, as though the earth itself had shifted. He convinced himself it must have been animals. June 13th, 10:46 p.m. He wrote by flashlight, the glow dim and yellow. His entry carried unease. Tonight, the forest was not the same. He had spent the day hiking, his boots crunching along narrow paths that wound between moss and roots. But as the sun sank, the silence returned in a different shape. No crickets. No birds. Nothing. The woods held their breath. He described how, while cooking a small meal of beans and rice, he thought he heard voices. Faint, far away, like people calling from a ridge. Yet no words could be made out. He turned in every direction, but the sound dissolved into the trees. He tried to laugh it off in the entry. The forest echoed strangely. That was all. But his handwriting betrayed him, the lines pressed deep, his letters sharp with tension. He admitted he felt watched, though he knew no one was near. June 14th, 8:02 p.m. The diary opened again. His hands shook as he wrote. The page smeared where his palm dragged across the ink. Today he had walked farther, past fallen logs, deeper into the brush where the trail disappeared. There, he had found a clearing. In the center, stones arranged in a ring, each one marked with scratches. He traced them with his fingers. They felt deliberate, though no meaning came to him. The voices had returned that evening. This time closer. They murmured through the dark, threading between the trunks. He described them as low, whispering, shifting, impossible to follow. He turned off his flashlight and listened, crouched near the dying fire. He thought he saw shapes between the trees, tall and thin, moving without sound. His breath caught in his chest, but when he blinked, the shapes were gone. He wrote that he felt sure someone was there. Watching. Waiting. June 15th, 12:47 a.m. He had not slept. The entry was broken, jagged, the ink streaked where the pen scraped too hard. Something circled his tent. He heard the crunch of leaves, the snap of twigs. He froze, clutching the flashlight, yet fear locked him in place. The steps came slowly, deliberately, around and around. He whispered into the diary that he dared not look. To unzip the flap felt like opening himself to something vast and cruel. Instead, he held still, counting each breath until the sound faded. He ended the entry with one word, written 3 times, waiting. June 15th, 6:15 a.m. The forest had returned to its bright, indifferent self. He crawled from the tent to find no tracks, no signs of disturbance. Only damp grass bending in the morning sun. He wrote that he questioned himself. Perhaps fatigue had played tricks. Perhaps dreams had bled into waking. Yet deep inside, he knew it had not been imagination. The sound of footsteps remained clear in his memory. He packed his gear to move closer to the trailhead. His hands shook as he rolled the tent. The woods felt heavier, as if pressing in from every side. June 15th, 9:22 p.m. The diary told a story of frayed nerves. He had tried to leave. He had walked toward the road, but found himself turned around. Trails folded back on themselves, landmarks shifted. No matter how far he went, he returned to the clearing with the stone circle. Exhausted, he pitched the tent again near the same fire pit. His entry spilled with unease. He felt trapped, not by chance, but by design. He thought he heard laughter in the trees. Not loud, not sharp, but soft and hollow, stretched thin. He swore the stones in the clearing had changed positions, forming a tighter ring. He dared not step inside. He wrote of the growing certainty that something unseen followed him, that each shadow held a shape ready to move. June 16th, 2:14 a.m. The diary filled with frantic script, letters slanting hard. Something touched the tent. A press against the fabric, slow and deliberate. Then another from the other side. He froze, clutching the flashlight, his breath ragged. The shapes of hands or faces bulged against the thin material, then withdrew. He wrote that he whispered to himself to stay still. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. He could feel them standing just outside, waiting. The entry ended abruptly with the words, "They know I am awake." June 16th, 7:05 a.m. Morning again. The sun felt pale and distant. He stepped from the tent to find the clearing quiet. No sign of disturbance. But the stones, he swore they had crept closer. The ring now surrounded the fire pit itself. He stared at them for a long time, then forced himself to write. His hands cramped as he scrawled, "They want me inside the circle." The thought unsettled him so deeply that he slammed the diary shut. Yet later, he opened it again and wrote one more line in smaller, tighter letters. "Maybe they want to show me something." June 16th, 9:48 p.m. He could no longer pretend calm. The whispers grew stronger. Not just voices now, but syllables, words half-formed. They brushed the edge of hearing, slipping away when he tried to listen close. The trees seemed to bend inward, leaning, their branches clawing at the sky. His fire sputtered low, though he fed it with wood. Shadows gathered thick, and in them he saw figures. They did not move like people. They glided, limbs too long, heads tilted. When he blinked, they vanished. Yet the fear did not vanish with them. His diary entry ended with the confession that he felt himself unraveling. The forest no longer seemed real, nor did he. He feared sleep, yet he feared staying awake even more. June 17th, 1:33 a.m. He scratched at the page until the nib tore through. His entry was nearly unreadable. They called his name. Not whispered, not guessed. His name, spoken from the trees. Drawn out, deliberate. He wrote that he pressed his hands to his ears, but the voice came from inside, too. It spread through his skull, vibrating like a tuning fork. The tent shook. Not from wind. From pressure. Something pressed against every side at once. He screamed, though no one answered. He wrote, "I cannot leave. They will not let me. The stones are closer again." June 17th, 6:42 a.m. The sun came thin and cold, filtering through branches that seemed twisted overnight. The clearing felt altered. He swore the circle of stones now touched the walls of his tent. He wrote with trembling fingers that he no longer trusted his memory. Each night stretched into something endless, each morning a cruel trick of light. Yet he also wrote something else, a line that repeated across the page like a chant. "They want me to listen. They want me to see." His letters trailed off, smeared and broken, as though his hand had been guided or pulled away mid-word. June 17th, 10:18 p.m. The diary burned with fevered ink. The forest no longer breathed with silence. It pulsed, alive, every branch twitching. The whispers rose into a chorus, weaving through one another until they formed a language he almost understood. He wrote that the figures had drawn closer. He saw them now not only in shadows, but in the glow of his fire. Faces stretched smooth and eyeless, limbs too long to be human. They circled the clearing just beyond the ring of stones. He could not tell if they kept him safe inside or kept him trapped. The final words of the entry read, "I am not alone. I will never be alone again." June 18th, 12:04 a.m. The last entry of the night spread across 2 pages, written in jagged scrawls. The figures had entered the clearing. They moved without sound, gliding over the earth, stopping at the edge of the stone circle. They did not cross. They only stood, heads tilted, arms at their sides. Their whispers filled the clearing, overlapping, folding into his mind until thought itself became impossible. He clutched the diary as if it tethered him. His pen scraped across the page in desperation. He wrote, "They are waiting for me to step inside the circle. They will not stop until I do. I cannot endure another night. I cannot endure another voice in my skull. I must see what they want to show me." The entry ended there, the line trailing off mid-letter. June 18th, 7:11 a.m. The diary opened to a page marked with ash. His handwriting was weaker now, uneven, as if every stroke cost him strength. He wrote that the night had not ended. Even when light crept into the clearing, the sky looked drained, pale, as though dawn itself had been hollowed out. The figures had not left. They stood among the trees, motionless, watching. The stones felt closer still, pressed tight against his tent. He described the way the air inside the circle felt heavier, harder to breathe, like water instead of air. He could hear a faint hum rising from the ground, vibrating through his spine. He wrote one line again and again across the page. They are waiting for me to join them. June 18th, 9:45 a.m. The diary's next entry held longer sentences, as though he had forced himself into calm. He wrote of packing his bag, folding the tent, and strapping everything tight. He tried once more to find the trail back, but each path twisted into another. Trees leaned into new shapes. The clearing with the stone circle always returned to him, whether he walked minutes or hours. He described how sweat poured down his back, how his legs ached from climbing ridges that dissolved into the same flat ground he had left behind. He wrote, "The forest is not real anymore. It is something else wearing the skin of trees. Asterisk." He underlined the word else. June 18th, 11:58 p.m. The entry began in frantic lines. His letters tilted, colliding, as if the page had been written in the dark without control. He wrote that the voices had grown louder, no longer whispers but chants. They called his name in unison, a rhythm that pounded in his chest. He could not block them out, not even by pressing his palms to his ears until his skin bruised. He saw the figures closer now. Not only shadows, but shapes lit in the faint glow of the fire. Limbs too thin, joints bent backward, faces stretched long without features. They swayed as they circled. He wrote, "The stones are the only thing keeping them out. I must not step outside, but the circle moves. It pulls me closer to the center. Each time I blink, I am nearer. The entry ended with the words, "I do not know if I am still resisting." June 19th, 3:23 a.m. His handwriting had become barely legible scratches. He wrote that the figures had begun to reach toward him. Long arms stretched from the shadows, never quite crossing the stones. Fingers trembled inches from his skin. He dared not move, afraid they would seize him if he stepped even once outside the boundary. He described how the voices filled his head until he felt his thoughts dissolving. He could not remember why he had come here. He could not remember the city, his sister, the life before. Only the circle remained. At the bottom of the page, he scrawled, "They are inside my skull. They are filling me with their song, June 19th, 7:50 a.m. The diary's next page held calmer writing again, as though exhaustion had steadied his hand. He wrote that the figures had vanished with dawn, yet the stones still vibrated with a low hum. He dared not touch them. The air shimmered above them, bending light, as though the circle marked a place apart. He admitted that he now felt drawn to step inside, not out of fear, but out of need. He felt as if something waited there for him alone. He wondered if the forest itself had called him to this place from the start. The entry ended with one question: "What happens when I enter?" June 19th, 10:22 p.m. The diary filled with heavy ink, the strokes uneven and blotched. He wrote that the voices no longer waited for night. They swelled through the trees in daylight, rising from every shadow. They spoke in words now, words he could almost understand, syllables that twisted into shapes inside his skull. They told him to step into the circle. They promised to show him what lay beyond the trees, what lay behind the sky, what whispered beneath the earth. He admitted in the diary that he wanted to see, that he wanted the silence of not resisting anymore. He ended with the words, "Tonight I will join them." June 20th, 12:04 a.m. The ink grew wild. Whole sentences slanted until they scraped the edges of the paper. He wrote of standing at the edge of the stone circle, the fire dying at his back. The figures gathered close, their limbs bending in impossible shapes, their mouths opening wider than faces should. The chants pounded inside him until he trembled. He described stepping forward, placing one foot within the circle. The ground pulsed warm beneath him, like skin stretched over something living. The stones glowed faintly, symbols burning that he had never seen before. He wrote, "They are singing inside me. They're opening something. The forest is tearing, The entry cut off midline, ink dragged across the page as if the diary had fallen from his hand. June 20th, 3:47 a.m. The next entry returned in jagged scratches. His hand seemed barely able to form words. He wrote that the world inside the circle had changed. The trees bent back on themselves, forming spirals into blackness. The The sky had split, filled with eyes that stared without blinking. The figures no longer circled him. They towered above him, stretching higher than any tree. He described their voices as rivers of sound, flooding through him until he no longer knew his own thoughts. He saw visions of endless forests, each clearing with its own circle, each circle waiting for someone to step inside. He wrote, "Asterisk there showing me there is no end. Only circles. Only watchers. Only the song, asterisk." The ink smeared into the page as though the pen had been pressed too deep. June 20th, 6:30 a.m. The diary's page trembled with weaker script. He wrote that dawn had returned, but the clearing did not look the same. The stones no longer glowed, yet the air hummed. The figures had retreated into the trees, their shapes faint in the distance. He confessed that he could still hear the song inside his skull. He could not silence it. Even when he tried to hum to himself, the sound warped into their rhythm. He wrote one line again and again across the page. "I belong to the circle now." June 20th, 10:11 p.m. The writing had shifted. The strokes were smooth, deliberate, not frantic. He wrote that he no longer feared the figures. He saw them now as guides, as teachers. The forest was only a veil, and they had lifted it for him. He described how he walked among the stones again, how the earth pulsed beneath his feet. He said he could feel the circle inside his chest, a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. The entry ended with a promise, asterisk tomorrow I will step through fully. I will not return, asterisk. June 21st, 12:00 a.m. The diary's final entry sprawled across several pages, written in large, uneven script. He wrote that the figures had come again, their arms stretching wide, their heads tilted toward the sky. The stones shone with firelight, though no fire burned. The air shuddered, bending the trees as if the forest itself leaned inward to watch. He described stepping into the center of the circle. The ground opened beneath him, not with earth but with light that seared through every nerve. The figures raised their arms in unison, their chants thundering louder than any storm. He wrote, asterisk I see it now. I see beyond the forest. The sky is hollow. The world is a skin stretched thin. They are beneath everything. They are inside everything. They are waiting in every shadow, asterisk. The script grew frantic again, words overlapping, tearing into each other. They are here, they are here, they are here. The ink trailed off the page in long streaks, as if the pen had been dragged away mid-sentence. The diary ended there. The final pages bore no more words, only smears of black where ink had bled across the paper. The story closed in silence, the clearing empty, the forest still.